Hi, and welcome back to Rate That Album, a podcast where myself, Joe Fremming, and my good pal, Paul Muad'Dib, we each pick an album each week, and we discuss it, and then we rate it. And this week, I came up with a real humdinger, didn't I, Paul?
Fuck you.
Yeah. So if you missed last week's announcement and Paul's groaning and uncontrollable sobbing,
I was crying like a bitch.
I was too, Paul. This is what we do for our art. So I picked the 2003 album "Saint Anger" by Metallica. Now, Paul, what are your thoughts on Metallica in general?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Taking this aside, we both own Metallica shirts. I remember both of us wearing Metallica shirts in high school. I enjoy Metallica. The Black Album I know is divisive. Like that's, when you draw the line nowadays, people go, the Black Album's when things changed. When the Black Album came out, however, at the time, don't let anyone fucking tell you otherwise. Everyone loved the Black Album.
Yeah, it's a great album.
It's a great album. Again, now you look at it and go, whatever. Load was all right. Reload's about when I started to get leery. It was Reload for me when I was like, not sure Metallica. Stuff after that, it's like real whatever with me with Metallica. There's the politics, there's the bullshit I'm sure we're going to get into that I don't agree with them on, and where they started as a band and where they found themselves at is not the same people. But Metallica does know how to rock, and they are you can sit there and say I fucking hate Metallica. Guarantee you there's at least 10 Metallica songs that you like and you're just not admitting it. Yeah.
See, it was weird for me because in high school I liked Load and Reload. They were just kind of different. Granted, there was basically Metallica trying to basically be Alice in Chains, but whatever. They had good songs, even like for their faults. Even like up until this album, even like their bad albums had songs on it, and that's usually except for like maybe Kill 'Em All, the production was top notch.
Yes. I completely. Kill 'Em All is it's their first album. It was a completely different band. It doesn't hold up studio wise. Let's put it that way.
So now let's venture into where Metallica is when they start recording Saint Anger around 2001. It's 2001. They're riding high after suing Napster.
Motherfucker.
Which a lot of people may not realize they lost a lot of fans over that. Because the way it was framed back then was like the rich being upset at the poor for whatever. And,
yeah,
I was definitely in the corners like, fuck you guys, like downloading's not a crime. Downloading eventually killed the record store industry.
It did. Now I will say this, however, I want to talk a little bit about the Napster thing because I was in high school using Napster in high school, like in our high school.
Both of us were.
Yeah, both of us were using Napster in our high school, right? There was artists that came out for Napster. And there was artists that were against Napster. David Bowie famously was for Napster.
Neil Young.
And they looked at it.
Chuck D from Public Enemy, yeah.
Yeah, because they looked at it and where things have gone now, like Radiohead. Radiohead puts out their own shit now through their waste, right?
Yep.
Nine Inch Nails
does too.
Yep. So there was this thing of when Napster came out, it killed record stores because it hurt the record companies. Yep. Because it gave artists the ability to go in the business for themselves for the first time. And, then you had the Lars.
Yeah. So you have Lars at these like Senate committee meetings and then during court, just being the smuggest piece of shit.
He really was a piece of shit during that, right?
He still is a piece of shit.
Famously, I don't know if it's still up, but Newgrounds.com had a great Lars parody thing of his thing with Napster. It was brilliant. And like during it, like it shows him like all like getting all this money and like, you know, giving a finger to the fans and all this shit. Because that's really what it was at the time, you know.
He even got mocked by South Park, where the joke was like Lars couldn't afford his gold-plated pool.
Yes.
So yeah, and don't worry, everybody. The record companies figured it out via streaming, so they're still screwing over their artists even more so now.
Yeah. Oh, it's bad now. They again, if Lars hadn't sued Napster, I think it would have turned out better for artists in general.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, like, as I'm old, I get why he did it. You know, it's a commodity, and especially in the industry I'm in, which is, you know, news. Giving things away for free is not a very good business model.
No, it's not.
So we have the Napster thing. So going into this album, there's a lot of things happening. They decide to get a therapist and also document the making of this new album with a documentary movie, which is always a bad sign. Where you're at in a band. I think this is what you would call like the let it be moment. I mean, the Beatles infamously made a documentary at their worst moment in their
career. Yep.
As a band.
Mm-hmm.
Metallica did the same thing. So they're going in with this. So they have this going on. Longtime bassist Jason Newsted walks away from the band. He quits. He quits because he's not allowed via ultimatum by James Hetfield to not have a side project. It's either Metallica or nothing. The problem is the other guys have families. Jason Newsted is just a working musician. He always wants to be working on music, so he doesn't have that to go back to. So he wants to work on new music. Plus, Paul, you know the history. Jason Newsted spent 15 years as the FNG, the fucking new guy.
New guy. Yes. 100%. Yes, he did. That poor son of a bitch.
And if you watch like old documentaries they put out and like from like Black Album on, even if you listen to Injustice, they cut his bass, they buried his bass in the mix. Like they just treated him like shit.
And as a matter of fact, there is a version online called And Justice for Jason. Yeah, where it's a complete recut where someone put the bass back in. And guess what? It's a better album.
Yeah, it's a way better album. Like, with the bass in there, I would say And Justice for All is probably my favorite Metallica album. Exactly. Without the bass, I go back to Master of Puppets.
I would concur with you on that one, sir. Yeah, with the bass, Kill 'Em All is amazing. And I do like that album without it, but that mix is phenomenal.
Yeah, so he leaves the band right, at the dawn of recording. They're going to film this documentary about them making the new album. And they're talking with this therapist guy. And that's another reason Newsted left, as, he said it was pretty lame that they couldn't talk to each other without the help of a therapist. They've known each other all these years, but this is, I chalk it up to rich people problems. rich people problems. Yes, sir. Yeah, and I think Newsted would as well. It just seemed kind of stupid. And boy, did it ever. So with his absence, they go in the studio with no music, no songs written. They're doing this basically as a collaborative. So they're coming up with the songs pretty much on the fly. With their producer, Bob Rock. Now, if you watch the movie, the documentary that came out, Some Kind of Monster, really shows what goes wrong with this right away. Bob Rock has integrated himself into the band. And even to a point where there's a point where Newsted shows interest in coming back, and Bob Rock talks them kind of out of it.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's right. I see. Now, truth be told, I saw the documentary back when it came out, right? You watched it more recently than this. I
Yeah,
could
I
not
bought
bring
it for this podcast.
I couldn't bring myself to, I'll be honest, I couldn't. It was now, I'm sure years later, right? Now we're looking at almost 20 years later. I'm sure if I did watch it again, I'd have a different lens on it. But my God.
It's very
Um,
interesting. It's interesting. It's hilarious. They take themselves so seriously and they're so ridiculous. And they don't realize how ridiculous they look. It's fascinating. I would suggest people watch it. Even if you're not a fan of Metallica, it's an interesting documentary to watch. It's basically watching a band pretty much fall apart and kick out the worst thing they've ever done. And I'm surprised they actually continued on. It's also interesting to, not surprising, the last album they make with Bob Rock.
yeah, that's right. This was the last Bob Rock album. Yes.
Yeah. So not only do they have that going on, and they have this therapist who's slowly kind of integrating him. Like he's giving him notes in the studio.
Oh my God.
Which is just insanity. Like that's not his place. James Hetfield goes into rehab.
Yeah.
6 months. Yeah. Delaying the recording process. And it's, this is, that's a big move. This band is infamously nicknamed Alcoholica.
Yes, it is.
And it's, you watch it, when you're watching the documentary, you're really kind of rooting for him because, it's obvious he's not in a good place at the beginning. Like he skips his son's first birthday so he can go hunting in Russia and drink vodka.
Oh God, that's right.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I forgot about that too. What an asshole.
Yeah. So he comes back, and it's like by the time he comes back, it's already been a year since they first started kind of recording the album. And he can only work from I believe it's noon to 4.
Noon to 4. It's noon to 4.
Yeah, it's noon to 4. And he doesn't want anybody else working on the album after he leaves. Which, fuck you, James Hetfield, for making me agree with Lars on something. That is bullshit.
Well, could you? Okay, I just want to bring up some of the other crazy like bands we've looked at. Right? Could you imagine Pink Floyd if David Gilmour during Momentary Lapse of Reason was like, we can only work from noon to 4, and you guys aren't allowed to touch anything until I'm gone. While I'm gone. I mean,
hell, we might have got a better album.
You fucker. All right, go on.
So, he comes back. And so the recording process in itself, like I said, it's collaborative. So they're writing lyrics together. This is, it doesn't really work for Metallica. Like their songs, their best songs was written before they go in the studio by Hetfield and Lars. And they play for the band. Round Load and Reload is when they became more collaborative with the other two because they'd probably quit if they had not.
Sure, right?
Yeah. But you start seeing, in the documentary, this Frankenstein thing coming together, in which they are using Pro Tools to chop up 3-hour-long jams and make them into songs.
Jesus Christ on a crutch.
On top of that, and probably the most egregious thing, is Lars Ulrich's choice of the drums.
Oh, dude, it's so
he sounds like a kid hitting pots and pans. Like, what is that the hi-hat or whatever?
It's the snare. It's the snare drum, dude. When I was in a band, I've been in a couple bands, and we had this amazing drummer. He really was. He was fucking great. Problem was he had Phil Collins syndrome. He was a better singer than he was drummer, and he was an amazing drummer. So that kind of caused problems. He would always call it the farting on his snare drum sound.
It sounds terrible. It is a bad sound. We'll talk about it when we get into the actual album, but it's jarring right from the start.
Yeah,
and this is where I kind of round back to Bob Rock, because his role as a producer is to nip that shit in the bud. Like,
you're damn right. It
sounds bad.
Mm-hmm.
And you see in the documentary, and you especially hear it afterward, like when they're talking, like, let's make it sound like we're like raw and in a garage or whatever. Why? You already have not Injustice, but Kill 'Em All, and you have the Garage Days EP that they put out, which literally sounds like a garage band.
Yep.
Here, you have a garage band sound that's cleaned up by Pro Tools, so it just sounds like really shitty demos.
Yes, that's the perfect way to describe it, Joe. It sounds like shitty demos.
And so you have this whole process. So it gets to a point, they're recording, and again, it's piecemeal, like, and so at least certain songs are, where they're just like cutting up jams and making them into songs with Pro Tools. There's a scene where they have reporters in listening, like music journalists listening to, like, some of this music. You can tell on their face that they don't have the gall to say this is really bad. The only person who's honest is when Lars Ulrich brings his dad in.
I forgot
his dad listens. I think it's maybe Frantic or something, and he goes, and his I think his dad is Danish.
Yeah,
like his very European accent. He's very polite. He's like, this is a song that I would suggest you delete.
That is phenomenal.
Oh. And so they record the album. They have to, and like we discussed a little bit of this before we start recording. The only thing that brings them together is their mutual decision that they need to get rid of this fucking therapist.
yeah. That's kind of the climax of the movie, right? Like, that's when they realize we're better than what we thought we were.
Yeah. And, they hire a new bassist. What's his name? Robert Trujillo.
Yep.
Yeah,
Trujillo.
from Infectious Grooves and Ozzy. He's a great bass player.
He is.
He probably should have hired him while recording this album, but because you get pretty generic bass from Bob Rock, he's not.
No.
And again, Bob Rock's kind of like, he's who I pinpoint the most as the problem with how this sounds, because it sounds bad, and as a producer, considering he produced Black Album, he should have known better.
Well, and I also want to bring up, a little bit there. You're talking about that because, again, I have a little bit of insight in that, having been in some bands. I think also Bob Rock is why Lars is drumming is so bad because I don't think people realize when you're not in a band just how intricately entangled the bass and the drum are. If your bassist and your drummer aren't able to sync, nothing's gonna sound right. It's just what it is. It's just it's the nature of the beast. And I definitely get the vibe that Bob Rock and Lars Ulrich were not gelling during these 3-hour fucking jam sessions.
No. And they also had another interesting decision, which was no guitar solos in a Metallica album, where some songs are like 8-9 minutes long.
We talked a little bit about that before, just a minute before we got on air, and I said to you, you don't make an 8-minute fucking song without a guitar solo or some kind of fucking solo.
Yeah, and it goes to another thing with this album. It has a very nu metal vibe.
Oh, it's so bad.
And nu metal was god awful. It was a dark era for like hard rock music. Like, I was so happy when like the White Stripes kind of like broke, because hey, we have guitar solos and rock music.
Yes,
because you had like Linkin Park and Puddle of Mud and fucking Stained and Limp Bizkit. You got like the worst fucking bands you could imagine, and they all didn't play solos. And they always had the same reason. It was like, oh, that's so pretentious. Like, honestly, I don't think they could even play solos. I don't think they were technically gifted enough, and that's why they just didn't include them.
Right. Nu metal was like, Now, I love metal and I love punk. Okay. You don't have a lot of solos in punk because the talent, not that the talent's not there, but the talent's not there. It's just not the style, right? And it doesn't fit,
Well, they're also that by default, a lot of their songs are only 3 minutes long.
Right. And this new metal came in, and it was like this. It was like these punk kids that wanted to be harder than punk, and didn't have the talent to do it. I'm sorry. They didn't
have the talent, the edge, the creativity. Like,
I know that's
Blitzkrieg Bop has more talent in that 3 minutes than all of the Stained albums put together.
Yeah, and again, I know I'm coming off as like really pretentious saying that, right? Like, dude, you didn't get a record deal. I did get a record deal. I turned it down. So fuck off. It was bad. All right. I mean, it just, the talent wasn't there. So you want to ask me about that record deal off air? I'll be happy to tell you the story.
We'll get to it, but so we've kind of come to the point. So we're almost to the end here because I want to add a little of my personal experience with this album.
Please.
So the album comes out. I'm working at a place called CD Warehouse in St. Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
I worked this Tuesday afternoon, the Tuesday it came out. I have not seen people sell a brand new album that fast, used, in my whole life.
Oh, really?
I swear, it must have been like 15 dudes coming in like, this sounds like shit. I need to sell
it. That's okay. I didn't know that. You never told me that story. I remember I came in and saw you a couple times when you worked at CD Warehouse. And when you worked at the Fetus. But yeah, dude,
I've never seen a turnaround. I remember one guy say he went to Best Buy, picked it up, put it in a CD player in his truck, and then just beeline to our store to get rid of it. So that was kind of like the general reaction. And I remember putting it in, and that was the first and last time I listened to it until we did this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember this sounds like shit. And now, as we get into the part where we talk about the album, my opinion has not changed. This album sounds like shit.
This is okay. We've done some bad albums. Amanda Lear comes to mind, Joe. This made me want to listen to Amanda Lear. I was like, I will take that. I listened to Metal Machine music over and over and over again. I would not listen. I listened to this album 3 times, and each time I had to get fucking ibuprofen by the end because I was just miserable listening to this pile of shit.
Yeah, this is an album, again, it shouldn't have been released as is. It needs a lot of polishing.
Mm-hmm.
If Bob Rocket did his fucking job as a producer and actually mastered this and produced it and got the vocals right so it didn't sound like James Hetfield sounds like a 50-year-old man croaking at the microphone, I think, and you cut some of these songs, you would have had probably not the greatest Metallica album, but more of a listenable one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So let's get to Paul, because this is going to be the short part. What works for you on this album?
Nothing. Fucking nothing, dude. I hate this album so goddamn much. I mean, frantic. Saint Anger. Fuck you. I mean, and the problem with all of it truly is, we talked about it with, one of your major complaints with Blessed Are the Sick was the drumming seemed off. There's so many times where I'm like, Lars, you're off beat.
Yeah. And you see in the documentary, he doesn't give a shit a lot of the times when they're recording.
No, I mean, it goes off beat. There's you can't get a rhythm with the album, and you sit there and you go, yeah, that's the most metal thing. Fuck off. Fuck off. You're
rough.
making excuses.
I will be a little diplomatic, and I'll say there's ideas for songs in here that I think would work in a different context. I think Frantic, I listened to the live version, and they add solos and they don't have that fucking snare, and it's not a bad song. But like on this, when you listen to the studio, it just sounds horrendous. And it kicks it off, and you got like the good clunk, clunk, clunk snare sound. Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, and you get that, like I said, you get that. There's times in it where he goes so speed, and the bass isn't matching. Again, because Bob Rock, he can't match what Lars is doing, and then you got Hatfield singing, and it just becomes like it. It really becomes like, again, like this is something that Metallica should have handed the record studio and went in the bathroom and laughed at, like Lou Reed did. They're gonna have to put this out. Like, you're right. There's ideas, and we talked about it a little bit before the podcast, before we started recording. You had brought up, yes, some of the live stuff is good, and I was like, yeah, you know what, you're right. I have heard some of the live stuff, and it's, but the songs are so fundamentally different that I can't sit there and say that Frantic, the studio version, is the same song that they do live. It's not, and it should have a
learning from the mistakes of this album to make it better.
And I mean, okay, they did Load and Reload. They should do Saint Anger and Mount Anger, right? Do a sequel and fix this shit. Yeah. And maybe it'd be better.
This is an album, like, I thought about, like, yeah, they should, like, release it, remaster it, put a little more production value in it, pay more attention to the vocals so they don't sound as, like, because when you listen to, like, other Metallica albums, like, James Hetfield's voice, like, it rocks and it sounds good. And you don't get that here.
No.
Which is, sometimes you need a little assistance on vocals, especially on a studio album.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get that here, so it's pretty embarrassing.
You used the right word. This is an embarrassing album. Okay.
I think they are embarrassed by this album.
I don't know if they are, and we'll talk about that afterwards, or when we get closer to the end here. I don't think they are.
Well, they should be if they're not.
So okay, well, I'm gonna bring some of this stuff up. We'll talk about it now. Where it says right here, the album's snare drum sound was widely criticized. Ulrich has dismissed the criticisms in July of last year. I stand behind it 100% because at the moment that was the truth. Now, Hatfield said there are things I would like to change on some records, but it gives them so much character that you can't change them. Saint Anger could use a little less tin snare drum, but those are the things that make those records part of history. No, sir. No, sir.
No, you guys are. Yeah, and that's where the documentary comes in, because it's unintentionally hilarious. They just don't realize how smug and goofy they come off. Like, before I saw this movie, I kind of, they always just seem like, salt of the earth, kind of like blue collar bands. And that movie just destroys it when you see Lars selling his art collection for $9 million at like downtown Manhattan gallery.
Jesus.
Like, these guys are just, they're not the image they put out.
No, and they haven't been for a long time, right? And again, we knew that though from Napster, right? They were not looking out for the artists. They were, for the consumer. They're not looking out for the fans. Lars was looking out so he could buy his $9 million art piece.
Yeah.
Right. They became very quickly, I think, parodies of themselves.
Oh, they definitely are a parody of themselves in that movie. Something they haven't really fully recovered from. That image, from this album especially, and that documentary in particular. It just turned a lot of people off. For me, I just find endless amusement just because they just don't get it. It's like Spinal Tap, but like with real people. And the fact that like, in 2019, Lars was like, oh, it's just what it was, man. I wouldn't change it. It's like, well, then that's probably why it didn't sell that many records, Lars. And if it did, a lot of people were going to the stores I was working at to get fucking rid of it.
Well, yeah, and again, it's fucking bad. I mean,
Yeah,
I know we're sitting here, we can't play the albums obviously, because of copyright and shit like that. But my God, this is one of the few times where I wish I could play a sample of the song for you guys and just be like, listen to this fucking 30-second clip because it sucks.
Oh, it's terrible. And just like a side, just because the most hilarious moment in this movie for me. So Lars, through the therapy thing with the guy, he talks with Dave Mustaine. Now, not a lot of people know Dave Mustaine was in Metallica for a hot minute until, but he's a mean drunk. And they booted him to the curb. They woke him up one morning and kicked him the fuck out. Like,
now, that story's hilarious because they were on tour and they kicked him out and they didn't even give him a bus ticket. They didn't give him a bus ticket or a plane ticket home.
I mean, that's how much of a son of a bitch the guy was when he was drunk. And so they have this little meeting and they're kind of like being honest. And like Mustaine's like, I was a victim, all these people saying, oh yeah, they kicked you out of Metallica. The dude deserved every fucking bad thing from the Metallica backlash that happened to him. He is a giant prick. Like, I've seen Megadeth live. It was one of the worst live shows I've ever seen, just because how much of a raging asshole Dave Mustaine is.
Okay, let me. Okay, I'm gonna give you a face off here, dude. What'd you say? He's as bad as Axl Rose?
He's worse than Axl Rose.
Ooh, that's fighting words, sir.
Because he is just a raging asshole, and like the movie tries to make you feel like sympathy for him for how it ended, but it doesn't give you the whole context of why they kicked him out and why all that happened. Because he was a mean drunk, they couldn't be around him, and he's like, "Well, if you guys would have told me to go AA and all that, I would have." It's like, no, anybody who's been around a mean drunk in their early 20s, you're not talking that guy into going to AA.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not.
That is just fantasy on Mustaine's part, and it's laughable, and it's the most hilarious scene because Lars is like, "Yeah, I didn't think of any of this at all," and you can tell he doesn't care. And that's the only time I felt like on the same page with Lars Ulrich.
That's like, phenomenal.
Fuck you, dude. Like, you landed on your feet. Quit fucking complaining.
Right. And I mean, and that's the other thing too, man. It's just like, okay, first of all, and again, it's been a long time since I've seen this damn documentary. Explain to me why, again, Dave Mustaine was in these fucking, what was in these meetings?
They don't really explain it themselves. They're just like, that's the weird, it just happens. Like, you're like, 1 minute they're like talking and like, James is like, yeah, well, you guys can't work after 4 because that's when I'm done. And then they like pop to Dave Mustaine or whatever. And you're like, wait, why are they talking to him? Like, it's supposed to be like this big confrontation. And you can just tell, like Lars just doesn't give a shit. And like, I'm just laughing my ass off because like how like whiny he is. Like, you guys just kind of ruined my life. And it's like, fuck you, dude. Like, you ended up fine.
Oh my God, what a fucking D-bag.
Yeah, it's wild. And so, like, rounding back, like, yeah, this album just sounds like shit. It's bad. It's like, there's moments where I can hear, like, if they took parts out and made it into a different song, it would work a lot better. But it's just, God, like, I think the most egregious song for me is Invisible Kid.
Oh,
that was a bad song. That's just like, they're just it did feel like to you, Paul, because it felt like it to me. Like, they're just throwing every random idea at this song that they put.
Dude, I felt like that with a lot of songs on this album. Like, again, I mean, Saint Anger, the title track sucks. Dirty,
Dirty Window.
Dirty Window is boring, but yeah, Invisible Kid, that's another 8-minute song, right? That's one of those 8-minute songs.
No solo. Like, what's Kirk Hammett doing?
Yeah, Kurt Hammett sounds bored. He had to be bored out of his fucking gourd on this. It's not. I don't want to say it's not Metallica because it is Metallica, right? But it's fucking. Yeah, it sounds like they're just doing whatever they can, throwing whatever they can up against the fucking wall, and seeing what they can get away with, right? And what they can get, told that, oh yeah, we can do this, we can. It's bad. It's just the only word I have for it, dude. It's fucking bad.
They only have themselves to blame for this. How just fucking terrible this is, And Bob Rock, he should never be allowed to produce an album again after this because, dear God, you're putting your name on this, people. Just fucking, trim this thing. There's a scene where they play it for their management, and the guy's here's the first couple songs that they pick personally, and they keep playing for it, and you can just see the look of disgust on his face. This album's bad. No. To quote Lars's dad, delete this.
Yeah, it's 10 shades of awful, dude. It really, 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 really is. I haven't.
It's from a band that should know better.
That's it. That's it right there, Joe. That's it. It's from a band that should know better. And that's where I get upset with this. In terms of what they should have done, and what they did do is 10 shades of horrible.
Yeah. What they should have done is put the thing on hiatus once Hetfield went into rehab. And don't even scrap these sessions and start anew once he was good.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I don't know what the documentary doesn't show you is what the pressure they might have had from management and the label. You just don't know. I don't know that. I don't know what, but it feels like there had to be some of that for this to have been such rushed, And it's this has to come together, because it just nothing about this album works.
Nothing in this album works. And that's, I think, the key thing here. Again, they fix some of the stuff live. Yep. It doesn't work. Now, I do want to bring up a few things here, if you don't mind, reviews, conversations, that kind of thing, with reviews and things of the album. Okay. So right now, the album holds a 65 out of 100 based on 20 reviews on Metacritic. There's a lot of people
that seems a little high.
20 reviews. Okay, 20 reviews. The reviews on this were wildly crazy, dude. Some people gave it 1 star. Some people gave it 4 stars. I mean, it's just what it is. Pop Matters commented on the album saying, "Well, it's an ungodly mess at time, but what you hear on this album is a band playing with passion for the first time in years."
I didn't get any of that.
I
heard people slugging along just to put out a fucking product.
Yes, we're going to talk about this too, because this is something that this is why you need to read reviews and not look at numbers. And we're going to talk about this a little briefly. Blender said it may be too late to rehabilitate Metallica's image, but once again, their music is all about bringing the carnage. NME said the songs are stripped back, heroically brutal reflection of this fury. You get the sense that as with their emotional selves. They've taken metal apart and started again from scratch. There's no space wasted here. No time for petty guitar solos or down-tuned bass trickery. Just a focused, relentless attack. Okay. You're making excuses, again, for a band. And this is a band that, no, this is why I tell people, when you see a review number, you also need to read it. Because this is something that happens especially with video game and movie reviews and even music reviews. They're now beholden. The magazine or now really the YouTube channel, right? You don't get invited again if you don't review it right. You know, you don't review it in a certain way. So now when you look at these reviews, you'll see things that are like, you know, oh yeah, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. And then you go in and read it and you go, that's not a 7 or an 8 out of 10 review, man.
Rolling Stone was infamous with that.
Yeah, Rolling Stone was infamous for that because they knew how to play the damn game.
Yeah, so you'd see like what was there, like 4 stars or 5 stars because they do the 5-star thing. And you see like 4.5-star review for like a U2 album or another fucking whatever McCartney album.
Yep.
And it's just like praise, you know, the first couple graphs are like praising, and then they just beat the shit out of it because the writer's like, this is a bad album.
Yeah. And speaking of Rolling Stone, well, we'll talk more about this. I want to get into it a little bit more. All Music praised the album, punishing, unflinching document of an internal struggle, taking listeners inside the bruised yet vital body of Metallica, but ultimately revealing the alternatively torturous and defiant demons that wrestle in Hatfield's brain. Okay. And he says Saint Anger is an immediate record. No, it's not an immediate record. I will say lyrically, it's dark, and there's some demon exercising by Hatfield in this album. You could make that argument. But let me tell you something. I've heard some really dark albums, and it just came from, you know, the imagination and the creativity of the fucking team that was working on it. Yeah. You know, I'm not going to give I'm not going to give Hatfield credit, you know, for a guy that, again, skipped his kid's fucking birthday so he could go get drunk in Russia. Sorry, man. You're not getting...
And I'm sure, like, going through the treatment, he probably had ideas, but it just feels like this is rushed after he got out of treatment. Like, it feels like if they put more attention to the details and did a better production and really, like, focused on the songs, this would have been a different album. Mm-hmm. But it just feels just rushed right to the end, and it's from a band lost at sea. Yes,
1,000,000%. Now, I'm going to keep going here because I want you to just hear some of these things. Rolling Stone magazine had a positive reaction to the direction taken. No wonder there is an authenticity to Saint Anger's Fury that none of the band's rap metal followers can touch. Okay. He also commented, "There's no radio-sized 4-minute rock here. No pop-friendly choruses, no ballads, no solos, no wayward experimentation." I don't look at that as a positive review. Once again, Rolling Stone was notorious for that. When you listen to that, what I hear is, rap metal sucks. Yeah. Metallica's the best at doing it, and it still sucks.
Yeah. And if you look at it, the Rolling Stone review gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which, again, Rolling Stone's infamous for giving legacy acts these, like, shining reviews, even though the albums suck. Their album guide gave it 2.5 stars.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's where the Rolling Stone, like, it's just a joke. You have to read through it because, you know, Jan Wenner was called out a few years ago because he kept insisting Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, U2, like these legacy acts, they have to have a positive rating.
Yep.
And, like, it drove the reviewers nuts, and they eventually came out on that, which was just like no shocker, but it was like at least it was nice to have that confirmed.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Metallica is a legacy act. At this point in their career, they were around for 20 years. They were already a legacy act at this point.
Now, remember how we said that Pop Matters gave it a positive? Well, this is the negative from Pop Matters. They said The album dispenses with the recent spate of radio-friendly pleasantries in favor of a pedal-to-the-floor thrash, staggered and extended song structures, quick changes, and a muddled production that tries to harken back to the days of Kill 'Em All. All attempts fail miserably.
It does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pitchfork was, I think, the harshest on it. They gave the album a 0.8 out of 10. Yeah, I'm not saying 8 out of 10. They gave it a 0.8 out of 10 and said that Lars was playing with a drum set consisting of steel drums, aluminum toms, programmed double kicks, and a broken church bell. The kit's high-end clamor ignored the basic principles of drumming and timekeeping. Hatfield and Hammett's guitars underwent more processing than cat food when they both strummed through Saint Anger and most movements. They seemed to overwhelm each other with different terrible noise. Also, the duration of most songs made them boring to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's another thing. It's a boring Metallica album, which is a weird, say what you will, like some of the albums just, they're not as good as the others. I have my gripes, but I still like Load and Reload just because they were doing something different. This is just boring. It's a boring album. Like, I don't know what the hell. It was a chore to get through this one.
And this is the thing. Again, you like metal. I like metal. I like black metal, death metal, that type of thing. This was not enjoyable in terms of anything. And you're right. I mean, for as much as it, they hear these reviewers going, "Oh man, you can hear the Metallica, coming back, blah blah blah." You're right. You didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. I hear a boring slog, like.
And I think at this point, a lot of these reviewers were like, hope they went in wanting this to be a better album. Mm-hmm. Because at this point, they hadn't done anything since Reload, which I think was 97, 98.
Well, when did S&M come out?
Well, that's a live album.
That's true. That is a live album.
And so was
fair enough.
Garage Days was just Garage Inc. or whatever. It was just a covers album.
And that's true. Yes. So,
okay. This was the first of new material, and it just fell right on its face. It's sold, but at this 2003 albums, it didn't matter. This was toward the end of large selling albums. It rode because it sold because it said Metallica on it.
Well, and I want to talk a little bit.
They resold it to me because of the sound Metallica made.
And I do want to. I think in hindsight, this is why reviews are so important, right? I think if people had been more honest at the time that this album sucked, I mean, when you look at it, okay, when the album came out, okay, the first week of sales were 400,000 copies. It debuted number 1 around the world because it's Metallica, right? But when you look at what the singles were, they charted number 21, number 28, number 18. Yeah. They weren't very high up there. This was not a great album for them.
No.
And as you talked about, just because someone buys it doesn't mean they got rid of it right away or don't like it. Bruce Springsteen, I love the man to death. He's an album has come out. Fuck, it's gonna sell regardless if it's good or bad. Yeah. Coldplay, for fuck's sake, puts out an album, it's gonna sell because it's if Limp Bizkit came out with a new album tomorrow, do you know how many streams that would get because it's Limp Bizkit back? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not
when you're a legacy act, that's kind of just how it goes. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they put their blinders on with legacy acts like that. Mm-hmm. It's really frustrating to me. Even bands I like Springsteen, he put out a country western album a few years ago, and I just thought it was fucking terrible. And I'm looking at the reviews, and people are gaga over it. And I'm like, why?
Yeah, why? Why?
Because it's Springsteen.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, because it's Springsteen. There's. All right, we could go on, but
we can go. So, Paul,
fuck.
I think we've come to the end of Sane Anger. Would you recommend this album?
No. You need this. You need to listen to this album like you need a head, you need a new hole in your head, man. Like, no, skip this. Like, I mean, as Joe said, you sold me. I'm gonna rewatch the documentary because again, it's been 18 years since I've seen it. No, I tried. Like, in all honesty, when we listened to this, I was able to get through the album all the way through only once. Every other time, I found myself skipping, especially some of those 8-minute songs. Like, oh, I remember where this is going next. Oh, I remember where this is going next. It was hard to make it through this album front to back 3 times. Joe, this is the only album I've had to do that with. Every other album that we've reviewed up to this point, even Momentary Lapse of Reason, I was able to make it through front to back. As angry as I was, I didn't skip the songs because I needed to do it for our art. I couldn't do it with this one. Yeah,
it's a rough one. I wouldn't recommend it, but I would recommend watching the doc.
Yes.
It's interesting. I'm a music fan, so I'll watch a documentary on. I watched a documentary on the Eagles, and I hate that band. I'm just a sucker for them, but this is just it. It's hilarious, and like I said, it's unintentionally hilarious. They don't realize how ridiculous they are, which makes it all the better for me. And I've said this before, like it was on the Genesis podcast when we did Lamb Lies Down. Like, pretentiousness is so hilarious to me, and
yes, it is.
From like my love of Monty Python that always just mocks pretentiousness, and they just don't get it, and it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. Don't listen to the album. Again, I'm good. You sold me on the documentary. I'm going to rewatch the documentary. Fuck this album.
Fuck this. Well, Paul, we made it, though. It was a fun one to talk about because there's like, it was one of those albums, it's like the story, like everything that could go wrong did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's not even a good comeback story. Like, the odds were against them, but they eventually came back with The Lamb Lays Down on Broadway. Like, no, they came back with Shit Sandwich, you know?
Yeah, they came back with Shit Sandwich, dude. Yeah.
All right. That wraps it for Saint Anger. Let's do some plugs, Paul. What do you have coming up?
Let's see here. What do I have coming up? Hopefully by we're obviously, you guys know we're behind when we do these plugs. That's just the way it's kind of designed at this point. The second episode of Stranger Things hopefully will be out in 2 weeks. Hopefully I'll get the next episode of Cast That Movie, which is Dante's Peak, out next week. Fuck, dude. And then we know what the one we're gonna do after that. Do you want to know what we're gonna do after that?
Let's hear it.
Geely.
Woo! Not even the good.
No.
I'm not even saying good as in good as like the cut somewhat watchable Ben Affleck J-Lo movie, Jersey Girl, and I hated that, but at least I enjoyed George Carlin.
Yeah. It's yeah. And you were the one that rewarded me. You're like, no, because I thought it was Jersey Girl. Like, I got the two confused. And you're like, no, dude, you're in for the shit. And I'm like,
no, you're in for World of Hurt, brother.
Ooh, yeah.
Cream rises to the top.
Cream of the crop. Honestly, with this one, would you go with again, I would take Gilmer. Gilmer, get back on the bus. You're rehired. Put some solos on this, Gilmer.
God damn. Yeah, they really Gilmered this one up.
Oh, they Gilmered this one really, really bad. I'm surprised Bob Ezrin wasn't the fucking producer.
Oh, he's gonna be creeping up in these podcasts so often.
Oh, he sure is, sir. All right. Yeah. What do you got going on? That you surprised me with something, but go on. You had something on the
Yeah,
Joda.
so we released the Red Dragon review. You know, the crappy version of Manhunter, which is a fucking masterpiece.
It's such a good movie. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so I decided, because I didn't want to sit through 4 hours of Zack Snyder gloom, I switched my pick. So the next review coming out is the Mortal Kombat remake, or not remake, reboot.
Reboot. Yes. Yes. I will be honest with you, man. I sat through both. I have sat through both the Mortal Kombat reboot, and I have sat through. I forced myself this weekend to sit through and watch Batman v Super, or the Justice League Zack Snyder cut.
Yeah, it's long.
It's long.
And it's not. It doesn't add anything to me. Whatever. Well, Brown and I will get into that too. But yeah, it's unnecessarily long. Zack Snyder has no business making movies, in my opinion, at this point. Like, he just can't. He doesn't understand story structure. He doesn't understand motivations of characters. Like, he just doesn't get it.
I don't do the Joe down with you guys, but I just want to say my opinion, since you brought that up, was he tried to do Watchmen in a DC universe, and that doesn't work.
No. And he already did Watchmen, so like,
yes. Yeah, well, yeah, it's just, Watchmen is great because that was like a movie with, there isn't superheroes, right?
Yeah.
It's just people in costumes except for Dr. Manhattan. It doesn't translate well, and I'm sorry, man. Part of the reason why no Justice League movie will ever work, they don't get Superman right.
They never like Christopher Reeves was probably the closest to a good Superman. Like, the movies just weren't. They're entertaining enough, but like in this day and age, it's just everybody's so gritty and trying to replicate Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. It's just not going to work.
Well, no, and I mean, I just mean like again, I'm going to get nerdy for just a second, if I may, since we're doing that. Look, in the Justice League movie, there's a part where he's fighting Wonder Woman, right? For reasons.
Yeah, for reasons? Question mark.
For reasons. And
Wonder Woman brutally murdering those terrorists.
Right.
Oh.
Right. And so he's fighting Woman. Now, here's the thing. Superman is what's known as a mage tank in the geek world. And what that means is, your mages are your powerful ones, but they're supposed to be weak. And your tanks are supposed to be weak. They take a lot of damage, but they it's why the term mage tank exists, okay? And that is what Superman is. He's a fucking mage tank. However, super nerdism, in the comics, Superman does have a weakness besides kryptonite. You know what it is? It's fucking magic. That's why they put him against magical enemies most of the time. Lex Luthor is the most famous one. Yep. Lex Luthor, not Lex Luger.
The infamous WWE superstar Lex Luger.
Get on the Lex Express, baby. Yeah.
Didn't he kill Macho Man's ex or something? No, he didn't kill her. She just overdosed at his house or something like that.
She OD'd with him. Yeah. They were partying. He passed out and she OD'd.
Yeah. Miss Elizabeth.
Miss Elizabeth. Yep.
All right.
And what's that?
R.I.P. Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, R.I.P. Miss Elizabeth. That was unfortunate. But so he has a weakness, and it's magic. Wonder Woman's powers are based in magic. Like, if Wonder Woman and Superman were to fight, she would actually not Batman versus Superman. Batman would kill Superman in a second. Wonder Woman could actually damage Superman. And in this thing, there's this fight between them, and she uses the lasso, and it does nothing. And it's like, okay, is that like, you guys, like, people just don't understand the Superman character because all they're going off of is the previous movies and television appearances. No one's actually digging into the Superman lore and going, oh, by the way, there's some really cool other villains besides Lex Luthor that will Lex Luthor. God damn it, Lex Luthor, that will make sense. And you put him in this world with these other characters, Like, that's why he's dead for fucking 3 hours of the goddamn movie, because it'd be over in 15 minutes.
Yeah. I just glazed over, man. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
That's fair. No, that's fair, man.
That's too deep for comic books for me. Like,
yeah.
I knew those like when I was younger, but I just not kept track. And
I haven't.
That's the thing with superhero movies; they expect you just, especially the DC ones. Like, you have to have like this preconceived knowledge, and I don't just make an entertaining movie. That's all I ask.
And you didn't do it. You didn't do it.
They didn't do it. Zack Snyder he's fucking terrible. Did you watch the Mortal Kombat movie?
I did watch the Mortal Kombat movie. I know you're going to do the Joe Down, but what was your preliminary thoughts on it?
It was so fucking bad. It was I think it was a worse movie experience for me than the Snyder cut of Justice League.
Okay, I'm glad you said that.
It started really good with Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and then it just fucking nosedives.
That first 7 minutes of the movie is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I was watching it with my wife, and I immediately I'm like, oh my God, this is so predictable. Like, this is, I knew exactly what was going to happen, when Cole was going to get his Arcana. It just was like, you guys could have done something. And they tried to make it without a tournament. And what they have to do is
very confusing.
Yeah. And what did they do? They end up making a tournament anyways. Like, why didn't you just do that from the beginning and not have a fucking 50-minute lull in the middle of the movie?
Yeah. I honestly enjoyed the 1995  movie a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's cheesy, but whatever. It wasn't like, this movie was just, Goro, like, why is he like a hitman all of it? Like, I'm going to save this for the Joe Down because I'm getting a rage fucking.
Yeah, save it
right now, man. Nope. Trying to think of it. But yeah, that's what's coming up with the Joe Down. Paul, this week, you haven't told me what your next pick is, and you keep snickering like a psychopath whenever I bring it up. So, what album were you listening to? God damn it!
Oh, Gilmer, you Gilmered yourself so bad with this last pick. Whew, we are going to do a doozy next week, buddy. We are going to do Duran Duran's 8th studio album, Thank You, which is a cover album.